getting ready to do a Dr. Bill show.
Because no matter what, no matter where, you need the truth. And specifically, if you're listening from Newport Richey to St. Petersburg or from Tampa to the coast, you can get the answer on FM 93.7. Always on AM 860, online at theanswertampa.com. And depending on where you are, on FM 93.7.
If you could do one thing that changed you forever, would you? How about something extraordinary? Now you can join Dr. Sebastian Gorka and Dinesh D'Souza on the Stand with Israel tour, November 30th through December 9th, 2022. We'll visit over 40 iconic sites straight from Scripture. For all the details and to reserve your spot today, visit standwithisraeltour.com or call 855-565-5590.
The Answer, online at theanswertampa.com.
Odyssey.
Here is your exclusive AccuWeather forecast.
After partly cloudy start, some sunshine today, high 60. It'll be clear tonight, low 42, then plenty of sunshine tomorrow. Monday's high 64. Clouds move in tomorrow night, and Tuesday will be mostly cloudy with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm in the afternoon. That day's high 66. Partly sunny Wednesday, high 70. That's your AccuWeather forecast. I'm Sally Sherman for AM 860. The Answer.
And I'm Dr. Bill, your radio MD. Good morning to you, Ken. Good morning, everybody out there. Hope everybody's feeling good.
Morning, Doc.
Hey, was it George that we were giving mugs to last week? I think it was George, wasn't it?
I think you're right. Yes, sir.
George, I just wanted to let you know it's in the mail, baby. If you guys don't get your mugs, just call Ken and yell at him. It's his fault.
I'll take care of him for sure, Doc.
All
I
right.
got a mug this way. I paid a visit to the doctor, an office visit, and left with a Dr. Bill, your radio MD, coffee mug.
Did you get a box? I want you to take a whole box of them to the station.
I grabbed about 6 of them.
Oh, well, get some more next time you're down.
Yeah, passed one out to Steve and Barb and Joe and Roger. All got one, yeah.
I got.
And my wife got one too. I brought it home and I put it on the counter, and she just fell in love with it. It matches our decor.
Good. Well, you know, I told you my neighbor John, who's a bigwig in GM, he was on a conference meeting with the executive board last week of General Motors, and he was holding his mug of Dr. Bill up. Yay! I love it. Hey, did you see that game last night? I mean, I know not everybody's a football fan, but did you see Cincinnati upset or beat the Titans, and then Green Bay got beat too? Did you see that?
I watched both those games. Titans kind of beat themselves a little bit. Got a good call, but couldn't take advantage of it. And the Green Bay Packers, I don't know who that team was.
Boy, the 49ers, they just looked really awesome. They were not. I don't think they were at the level of us, of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, when we're doing extremely well. But I think they got a shot at it, and we'll see what happens. It should be interesting today. We got to get past the Rams now.
The Rams, yeah. So that's gonna be a tough game today, but I think we'll prevail in the long run.
Yeah, I think so too. Our defense is back, and when we played them the first time, I think that our defense was pretty beat up. I don't think we had Gronkowski either at that point.
So right, yeah.
We've got some assets back, and I think we'll be okay. I hope we make it to the Super Bowl. I think we will. We'll see what happens.
By the way, just want to point out, you can win a Dr. Bill, your Radio MD coffee mug later on in the show. Just pay attention to what we're talking about in the first half of the show, because the question in the second half of the show will deal with something that happened in the first half of the show. So just want to get that out there before we get into anything. Well, what are we getting into today, Doc?
Well, first I got to tell you now, we do have the rapid PCR test in the office for the COVID. And that's different than the antigen test. The antigen test is less expensive, a little less accurate. The PCR test, the nucleic acid amplification test, they actually test for the genetic material of the virus, whereas the antigen test tests for the proteins on the surface of the virus. So you think of the virus as a little cell with a capsule, and then the coronavirus has a spike sticking off of it. So we have two tests now, and of course the rapid PCR test is a little more expensive. I got the wife to lower it to $150, and some people are charging $300. And some places you go, they send it out, and it takes 2 or 3 days before you get it back. We'll have it to you in 15 minutes.
That's pretty phenomenal.
It's a pretty neat little machine. I was impressed. It's got its own little internal heater, and it's got its own little computer, and it's just really a fancy little piece of equipment. So we've got that, and let's make good use of it, folks, because I don't want to have to buy that thing from Abbott. They want $12,000 if I don't use it. Like, what?
What's the phone number for the office if people want to make an appointment or something?
727-384-6411, 727-384-6411. And for the antigen test, the PCR test, the COVID test, you can just walk in. You can also walk in for the vaccine. We've got the Pfizer and the Moderna. And don't listen to the press. If you've got 3 or 4 doses of the vaccine, you've got some protection against the Omicron. The people we're seeing in the hospital with Omicron are largely unvaccinated, Ken. So, and I don't think we've had any deaths at our hospital from the Omicron. I know there's been about 100 in Florida with this last surge, but that's a pretty small number considering we're, 22 million people now?
That's about right, yeah.
So I'm not worried, but you do need to get vaccinated, and don't listen to this stuff that the vaccine doesn't help with the Omicron. It doesn't mean you can't get Omicron, but what it does mean is you won't get that sick. And that was the same with the Delta. So do the smart thing and get vaccinated. Well, now we're looking at, I'm so sick of talking about the virus. I want to move on. Any questions out there? Good. We're moving on. So we're talking about this morning. Let's talk a little bit about the Ukraine. And I know a lot of people say, it's not our fight. We don't care. You better care. This is the same attitude we took in the 1930s when Germany was on the rise, and we ended up in the largest world war ever with more deaths than any war had ever caused, and more destruction and more chaos. Now, out of it came a bright new future, but still hard way to get there. War's a hard way.
Let's look at the similarities for just a second, okay, Doc? All right?
Yeah.
We let Hitler get away with what he got away with initially.
And we're letting Putin get away with what he wants to get away with.
Exactly. Then, and you know what was happening on the other side of the world? The Japanese were watching this and saying, well, nobody's going to do anything. So let's go into China.
And we said, don't do that or we're going to put sanctions on you. And they said, oh, we're scared. So we
Exactly.
cut off their oil, we cut off their rubber supplies, we cut off their chromium, the raw materials that we were supplying to them. And so they said, well, we'll just go take Southeast Asia and get our own. We'll drill for our own oil. Now, they had a big debate, though. They said, should we go north, further, deeper into China and Manchuria and look for resources there, or should we go south to Southeast Asia? And when Tojo and his cabinet were meeting, there was a big dispute. There were the Northerners and the Southerners. And the Northerners were saying, look, if you go south, you're going to have to confront the United States because their presence in the South Pacific is pretty hefty, as is Great Britain's. And so you'll have to attack them. And the Northerners were saying, that's not a good idea. I don't think you're going to win that battle. Southerners won out, and they attacked us at Pearl Harbor.
Because they thought we were weak and we wouldn't do anything.
And this is the same nonsense that the Chinese and the Russians are seeing coming out of our weak president and our weak White House. They want to focus more on their own self-aggrandizement and what they consider to be social agenda, which is really just another way for them to lock in more power. And another thing that happened in the 1930s was the worldwide lack of luster and falling out of love with democracy. And people were saying, well, democracies don't work. Look, we're in this horrible recession in the 1930s, and the Russians, they're not starving. Of course, they were, but, the Russians were putting out good press. And so people said, well, we don't know what's best for us. Let's just let somebody like Hitler or Mussolini tell us what's best for us. And there was a lot of animosity in Germany towards the world after the terrible Treaty of Versailles that punished them severely. And we've got the same kind of escalation of sanctions against China going on now. Last week we cut back several Chinese flights into the United States because they cut back several American flights into China over the Omicron. And we said, well, if you're going to do that, we're going to cut back some of your flights from your companies. And so it's a tit for a tat, and it's mounting up. And what's Biden going to do? I mean, you got the largest landmass country in the world. They probably have the most resources, natural resources, of any country in the world. I mean, the only countries that rival them in resources are going to be Canada and Australia, relatively small populations. But, Russia's got, 185, 200 million people. They're a good-sized country. They got the manpower, and they've got the resources, and they've got the market, too. The Europeans are buying their gas. They can pump out oil. They've got gold. They've got metals. I mean, they're capable of sustaining themselves. They don't need us.
Well, mark my words, if we let him take the Ukraine, China will move on Taiwan.
Yeah. China will move on Taiwan, and they'll try to shore up their claim to the South China Sea. And as I've said over and over again, if the South China Sea falls to the Chinese, worldwide shipping is going to be disrupted. And if you think the supply chains are a problem now, wait till the Chinese say, no, you can't come through here because you haven't paid your impact fees, and plus you're just not nice people and we don't like you. And
Europe better watch themselves as well, because you take all of your gas and your oil from Russia and you leave yourself wide open for terrible things that happen down the line if they want to cut that off.
Yes, you do. And remember, Russia, the Soviet Union, went to France and Great Britain before World War II and said, let's make a pact, let's make a deal. And France and Great Britain said, nah, we don't want to deal with you guys. You're a bunch of communists. And so Stalin turned to Hitler and said, let's make a deal. So they split up Eastern Europe, the Ukraine, and Poland, and the British and the French acquiesced, and the Sudetenland was ceded over to Germany. That was part of Czechoslovakia. The Danzig Corridor was given back to them, and they basically co-opted Austria. And nobody said anything until Neville Chamberlain, their prime minister, was booted out, and Churchill came in, and a lot of people didn't like Churchill, but you know what? He was the right man for the times. And he said, if you go into Poland, we're declaring war. And Hitler by that time had said, well, we don't believe you because you haven't really done much of anything yet. And Putin's saying the same thing. He's saying, what are the Americans going to do? They're not going to come over here. They're a bunch of wusses.
Yeah, and this is a man who grew up in the old Soviet Union and longs for the day of the Soviet superpower days, and he's trying to recreate that.
And
this is step one.
This is step one, and he took Belarus back. He conquered that, and now it's a client state.
Yeah.
And Georgia's basically a client state. All these little former Soviet republics that were independent after 1997. But the thing he's so upset about is that the Ukraine wants to join NATO. And so NATO, which is a big threat to the Russians because NATO initially was formed to put a check on the Russians, on the Soviet Union, is still seen as a threat by the Soviets, or by the Russians. They think,
well, it's a threat to their expansion, and that's what it's there for.
And it's a threat they think that the United States wants to invade Russia. That's what the Soviets have told their people. Now, whether the leadership really believes that or not, I don't know. But they've got the people thinking that and convinced of that. And this is dangerous, Ken. This is just dangerous. The Russians want NATO to be pushed back to its 1997 boundaries. And, there's a ton of countries that have come in to NATO since the Soviet Union fell. Let's see if I have a picture of that somewhere. I'll tell you all the countries that have popped up in. I mean, the
Baltics pretty much are in NATO now.
The Baltics were Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Poland, Slovakia, Moldova, Romania, Hungary. I mean, all these countries that were in the Soviet bloc, some of the Yugoslavian countries like Slovenia and Croatia, and they're all now in NATO. And so he's surrounded.
He's surrounded.
He feels like he's surrounded, and he doesn't want that. He wants to have control over Eastern Europe. And why the Ukraine? Do you know that the Ukraine has been considered the breadbasket of Europe for, centuries? They have been one of the largest producers of wheat and vegetables and all kinds of food stuff. And the Soviets had relied heavily on the Ukrainians for their daily bread. And when the Ukrainians had a crop failure, the Soviet Union suffered. It starved. It's a much bigger problem than most Americans think, and it's just a shame that the administration is playing this down. This is not a good situation. This is World War II in the making, or a repeat of World War II. It'll be World War III. Will we use nuclears? I don't think so. But if we get pulled into this, as we might, and we didn't want to get into World War I or II, remember?
Absolutely not. No, we
tried
stay out
hard.
of World War II right up until December 7th.
And Woodrow Wilson stayed out of World War I until 1917. So it was just the last year of the war that we entered. And he was one of these pacifist kind of guys. He wanted the world to get together, the League of Nations and all that. And he said, "We're not going to war. I'm not going to take my country into a worldwide conflict that we really don't have a dog in." But you know what? He ended up changing his tune. I mean, he was the opposite of what Teddy Roosevelt said, which was, you'd speak softly and carry a big stick, and if somebody misbehaves, you whack them. And,
well, I think, if I remember correctly, Germany was trying to conspire with Mexico to have Mexico attack the U.S.
Yep.
From the south, and that's what set off. What's his name? The president, Woodrow Wilson. That's what set him off. Once he found that out, he knew he had to go in.
That and the sinking of the Lithuania.
Yes.
Lusitania.
Yes.
Lusitania. So that was the visible insult that Woodrow Wilson used to galvanize the country and get us into World War I. And of course, Pearl Harbor was the event that galvanized the country and got us into World War II, because people did not want to go and fight another world war. Well, you know what? If we don't, this is the whole thing about staying strong militarily and not backing down and sending troops and weapons to allies and shoring them up, because it says to our enemies, you can't just trot on them. You can't just march in on them because you're marching in on us. And so they stop and think. And it maintains world peace and world order. And you say, well, that's a tough way to do it. Well, until somebody figures out a better way to keep a bully from attacking, what are you going to do?
Because you're always going to have bullies.
Yeah, I mean, until we evolve into some higher species, we're going to have bullies. We're going to have despots. We're going to have people who want to use their muscle to advance their own agenda. And, the Democrats are doing this in a peaceful way. They're doing it by stirring up trying to stir up the minority populations into thinking that they're being given an unfair advantage, and the woke movement and Black Lives Matter and all that. And all of this is backfiring on them now, but this is how they see they can build a power base and maintain power, and that's what they want. Power for power's sake.
Meanwhile, they're not focusing on the big picture, as you and I are right now.
No, and power for power's sake is nonsense. It's ridiculous. I mean, to have your people starving in the Soviet Union in the 1918-22 era, while the party members are eating steak and lobster, is just it's just unfathomable to me. Unfathomable. I can't even pronounce
Well, that's
it.
what leads to revolution.
Yeah, that's what leads to. Really, I mean, that's. Now, we're not starving here. There's no doubt about that. Everybody's well fed, despite what you hear and see on TV. I mean, I'm in the hospital. I'm in the office. I'm on the street. If there are people starving, it's because they're being neglected, or they're alcoholics, drug addicts on the streets, and you're not going to cure that by pumping out more food. You're going to cure that through other social agendas and social venues. So, but we have got to stand up. If we don't stand up, we're just leading the world, and it'll be our fault again, into a world war. We have to lock arms with our European and British cousins and say, no, you can't do that. But I don't see that happening, Ken. I don't see that happening. And, the Ukraine is one of the largest landmass countries in Europe if you take Russia out of the picture. I mean, I think it's a little bit bigger than Poland and Germany. Germany is pretty big, and Poland's pretty big, but I may be wrong, but I think the Ukraine's a little bit bigger than both of them. So this is a big landmass. This is a vital and important part of the world that it has seen trade from ancient times. The Silk Road ended basically in the Ukraine. Did you know that?
I did not know it went that far.
And that the Black Plague was introduced to Europe by the Venetians, who were trading up under the Black Sea into that part of the Crimea that was until the Russians took it back a few years ago. That's where they picked up the Black Plague, because they were trading with the Muslim traders who were coming down the Silk Road, and they'd come to the Black Sea, and the Venetians would sail up through the Straits of Dardanelles up into the Black Sea, and they'd pick up goods and come back. And along with it, they picked up rats that had the fleas that had the Black Plague. So this has been a major part of European history for millennia. There are Stone Age people dating back probably 10,000 years into that area. So we cannot just turn our backs on this like we did in World War I and World War II until it's a crisis, because, as I've said over and over again, the world is way too small, and the rocketry is way too fast, and now we've got the hypersonics. Oh my God. What are we going to do?
We don't really know they work yet. They've been tested.
They've been tested. Well, we hope that ours work. We hope theirs don't.
Well, it's quite a history lesson we're having this morning. I like this.
Yeah, and the other thing that
history repeats itself. It really does. If you don't pay attention to it, you're doomed to repeat it as well, as they say.
It does, and I got to tell you now, this is another sign. The Philippines, who have kind of turned back towards us, and they're now also cuddling up to the Indians, not the American Indians, not the Native Americans, although nobody's native to North America. They're just cousins of my wife's who got lost.
It's got here first, really.
Yeah, they got here first. So the Filipinos have bought or have contracted to buy from India the BrahMos cruise missile, which does Mach 2, but the Chinese have an anti-missile missile that does Mach 3.5. But these things will go about 180 miles, so they'll reach a little ways out, and they can carry a payload of about 1,500 pounds. So they'll do a little damage, and remember, these things can fly pretty low. They can go as low as 15 kilometers, which is, 9 miles? That's as high as they go, and as low as 10 meters, which is 30 feet. So they can go up to 9 miles high and come down to 10 meters. So they can fly pretty low, and they're about at the level that our cruise missiles were, I'd say, 20, 30 years ago, which were still pretty good.
Why are they buying ours?
Because the Indians and the Philippines are trying to get a mutual
Defense kind of thing going?
mutual defense pact going. And so the Indians are saying, well, if you're going to do that, you got to buy from us. And the Indians are saying, we got to build up our export of armaments, because Russia and China and the United States and even Canada, although the Canadians don't think they do, they export a lot of military hardware to the world. And there's good money in it, and it also makes for good relationships, because if you're buying military hardware from the United States and you need parts, well, guess what? You got to come back to us.
Yeah.
And that was the thing with the F-35, is that we realized that countries would not buy it if we made it solely here. So we said, okay, everybody gets to make one part, and you ship that part to us so that we can make ours here, and we'll ship what we've got to you, and you can assemble yours at your end. And since you're making one part that is vital, you got a key. So everybody said, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. So the United States had shipped out, and we've sold a bunch of these F-35s, which are not bad planes. They're not the F-22s, but they're still not bad fighter jets. These are attached to each other by these individual parts that each country gets to manufacture exclusively. And so everybody has to kind of hang together. Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. That works fairly well to make some cohesion. And
but Turkey dropped out of that, didn't they? Or we
they dropped out, but now they're starting to come back. And they're starting to, because see, they're afraid now. They have traditionally been an enemy of Russia. They've been at war with Russia off and on for hundreds of years. The Russians have been trying to take the Turks since the beginning of the Russian expansion. And so now the Turks are saying, ooh, we can almost see across the Black Sea the Ukraine. We're just a couple hundred miles away from these guys. I mean, they're coming. And so now they're coming back to us and saying, maybe we were a little rash a few years ago. Maybe we really didn't mean to cuddle up to the Russians that much. We just wanted to kind of see how they were doing, check in on them. So now we have got really and truly a pre-World War II, World War II situation here, Ken.
We do, and it's scary.
And for you and me, it's not going to impact us much because we're older guys and we're not going to be drafted. But our kids and our grandkids, and this whole idea that my sisters are pumping that our democracy is evil, and that the Chinese have a better system, and that this and that. I mean, they just don't know. They don't understand, and they're going to lead us into the same situation that we were in before World War I, and especially before World War II, in which we were attacked and pulled into the World War. And if we had intervened earlier, 10 years earlier, or 5 years earlier even, then Germany would have been contained. And they were not. And Japan would have been contained. And they were not. And they wreaked havoc all over the world, committed all kinds of atrocities and crimes. I don't know what we have, 60, 80 million people died in World War II. That's a lot of people.
Yes, it was. And it can happen again. Don't think it can't.
Don't think it can't happen again. It can happen again. You say, well, we've got nuclear weapons. Are you going to nuke the Russians, or is that what we're going to do? I don't
Not
think
unless
so.
we're prepared to be nuked ourselves.
Not unless we better have some anti-missile missiles that are really working
You
well.
better believe it.
Otherwise, we ain't going to be around. Well, we'll be around, but a lot of us will not be around. Some of us will still be around.
And your GPS may disappear. Now we're talking about space weapons and all kinds. It could be a really messy, messy war.
It would be messy, and the ability to knock out electronics with the waves from nuclear explosions, you would not even have to destroy a country to destroy its infrastructure. You could do it by setting off nuclear weapons higher up in the atmosphere that would maybe blow out windows and rain down a lot of radioactive material, but it would knock out our electronics.
Yeah, it's an electromagnetic pulse or something like that.
Yeah, electromagnetic pulse that would and could wipe out a lot of our electronics. And so then you're blind and deaf. Then
And
we
your
have to go-
planes fall from the sky and your cars stop.
Yeah, and then you have to send up smoke signals, and we would have to get
You
the
are pretty much
Navajos
back
out.
in the 1700s at that point.
Yeah,
I don't know
we'd
how
be-
to hunt.
We'd be back, we'd be 50 to 100 years back. We'd be before the telegraph, which
Yes.
was what, the 1840s, I think Morris first hooked up the telegraph. And I think we had transatlantic telegraph by 1870, 1860, 1870. We think that things were really primitive in the 1860s. Abe Lincoln sat in the telegraph office at the White House and had live ongoing reports of the battles that were going on. The Battle of Antietam, he knew every move that McClellan was making within 5 minutes of it. He knew every battle, every little step. He knew the whole story.
That was the beginning of the shrinking of the world.
And, I mean, it was almost instantaneous.
Yeah.
Just as quick as they could type it out, he got that information.
So if you like your Facebook, you better start worried about what's going on in Ukraine and places like that.
Absolutely. And if you think that we're isolated and insulated, we are not. We are not. We are.
Those two oceans won't protect us anymore.
They will not protect us. They didn't protect us in World War II. They still got over here and attacked us. Well, Ken, it looks like we're about at a break here, bud.
Oh my goodness! Look at the time.
Let's.
Hey, we've got a trivia question coming up next half hour.
Yeah, so stay tuned, and don't forget we've also got the COVID vaccine and the COVID rapid test, both the PCR and the antigen. It's 727-384-6411. Go ahead, Ken. Tell them about the mug contest.
Yeah, we're going to be giving away Dr. Bill, your Radio MD coffee mug right after the break here, and you're going to call in, answer a trivia question. The question will deal with something we talked about at the first half of the show, so stand by for that question, and we'll be right back.
With SRN News, I'm Michael Harrington in Washington. The British government is accusing Russia of seeking to replace Ukraine's government with a pro-Moscow administration. It says former Ukrainian lawmaker Yevgeny Myerov is considered a potential candidate. He's the head of a small pro-Russia party, Nashi, which currently has no seats in Ukraine's parliament. Strong winds pushed a wildfire that broke out of the rugged mountains above Big Sur, California, to the sea yesterday, forcing hundreds of residents on a precarious stretch of the coast to evacuate. Fire officials say the blaze broke out Friday night in a canyon and quickly consumed 1,500 acres of brush and redwood trees. Authorities issued evacuation orders for about 500 residents. And witnesses say Islamic extremists have abducted 17 girls in northeast Nigeria. 2 residents telling the AP members of Boko Haram attacked the village. This is SRN News.
Dr. Bill for Bay Area Medical, located at 6399 38th Avenue North in St. Pete, 727-384-6411, 727-384-6411. Full-service clinic with x-ray, heart imaging, ultrasound, stress testing, and minor surgery. We provide quality health care and well-trained and certified. Most American insurance and new patients accepted. Bay Area Medical, home of Can Care, 727-384-6411, 727-384-6411.
Dr. Bill here. With social distancing and sheltering in place, telemedicine is
You try to talk to me, Doc? I hear some crackling.
I'll just plug back in. We're still live on YouTube and Facebook, but I lost the feed.
Yeah, I turned it off when I heard the crackling, so I thought maybe it was blocking your signal, but I can hear you fine now. So here comes your feed.
All right, and so
Address when you call for your appointment.
Facebook and live streaming
Insurances. Canadians and visitors, please call your travel insurance company for an authorization number prior to the visit. Copays and deductibles apply. Self-pay rates are available. Just ask. We accept credit cards, PayPal, and Stripe. 727-384-6411. 727-384-6411. Dr. Bill here. My friends at St. Pete MRI and Sleep Diagnostics are your best choice for state-of-the-art MRI, CT, and sleep studies. Quality unsurpassed. 25 years experience makes St. Pete MRI my go-to imaging center. Self-pay rates are competitive and out-of-pocket cost a fraction of a hospital. Conveniently accessible from both sides of the bay at 750 94th Avenue North, St. Pete, near the Gandhi. 727-577-2220. 727-577-2220.
With PatriotSoftware.com, accounting and payroll, keep your time and money.
Mike Capel here, serial entrepreneur. In 2016, one of my employees accidentally clicked through an online vendor's contract, which recommitted my company to an additional 12 months of their service. I called the vendor to explain the accident. Nope, they pointed to their ironclad contract, told me to pay or else. I will pay them, but after 12 months, I'm gone. I've been in business over 30 years, and I've never made my customers sign a long-term contract. Never. And now, my fifth successful company, Patriot Software, offers payroll to business owners with 1 to 100 employees, and there's no long-term contract. And if you need help with your payroll, we will help you for free. Go to PatriotSoftware.com. Use promo code RADIO and get 2 months of payroll free. That's PatriotSoftware.com.
Good news, ladies. Ugly brown spots on your skin might feel like they're the end of the world, but they're not. You can fade those brown spots from view with Dr. Perry's Night Skin Cream. New customers can try Night Skin free. Diminish the appearance of brown spots on your face, neck, and hands. Try Night Skin free. Call 1-800-509-4152. Pay only shipping and handling. One per household. Call for your free Night Skin. Call 1-800-509-4152. That's 1-800-509-4152.
AM 860, The Answer. Online at theanswertampa.com.
Odyssey.
Here is your exclusive AccuWeather forecast.
After a partly cloudy start, some sunshine today, high 60. It'll be clear tonight, low 42, and plenty of sunshine tomorrow. Monday's high 64. Clouds move in tomorrow night, and Tuesday will be mostly cloudy with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm in the afternoon. That day's high 66. Partly sunny Wednesday, high 70. That's your AccuWeather forecast. I'm Sally Sherman for AM 860. Answer.
And I'm back. This is Dr. Bill. I got Ken by my side. Ken, you want to do the mug thing now, or you want to wait a minute?
No, let's do that right. Let's get this going right now. The question for today's prize, the coveted Dr. Bill, your Radio MD coffee mug, is how far, and I'm looking for a country's name here. It's been in the news. You should be able to come up with this. How far did Doc say the Silk Road goes? How far did the Silk Road go back when its day?
Yeah, where
What
did it
country
end?
did it
Where
end
did
at?
it end?
It went as far north as, and that's the country we're looking for, whatever that country was. 1-877-969-8600, 877-969-8600 is the number to call, and the first caller with the correct answer wins.
By the way, it's 2 mugs. I'm sending out
Oh,
2.
it's 2 mugs.
Yeah, I figured, what the heck, It's a twofer. Because I figure most people...
Well, you don't want to drink coffee alone in the morning.
Yeah, most people, they're going to have a significant other there. And even if they only have their dog, they can let their dog drink out of that. Put some water in it for them, or their cat.
So how far did the Silk Road go back in the day?
Hard to believe how long that trade route was. And it started in Xi'an, China, which is in west central China, about 150 miles south of the Gobi Desert, kind of on, right at the doorstep of the Gobi. And so a lot of the trek was through the Gobi as you went into China back then. It was right through the Gobi Desert. So amazing how much people got around even in those days, you know? Just amazing to me.
Well, the phone's ringing off the hook, so people are calling in with the correct answer, we hope. And
Oh, boy.
we'll see.
Well, while they're ringing the phones, I'm going to talk a little bit about Japan and the United States and our mutual defense pact with the Japanese. Now, we've got troops over there. We're still in Okinawa. Right now, they're upset with us because of the virus, and we're not as restrictive and as diligent in our, what shall I say, our hygiene. And, of course, that's very offensive to the Japanese. But they also see that they're going to need us if the Chinese start moving, if they move on Taiwan. You know, they might just say, well, hell, let's just take Japan while we're in the neighborhood. You know, and the Japanese are like, So the Japanese are developing a sixth-generation fighter jet with the United States, and we're also doing joint maneuvers. And the big debate in Japan right now is, Ken, should they be an offensive country, weaponry-wise, or a defensive country? And, of course, after World War II, in their constitution, they had that they would never be a nuclear power and that they would only do defensive kinds of things. But that's, 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago? I can't remember. It's 80 years ago now, World War II. And that's a long time ago. And memories fade and new crises arise, as we're seeing. And although they look similar to the old crises, they have different players playing different parts. And so now the Japanese are saying, the conservative Japanese are saying, you know what, if we don't have offensive weaponry, if we're not able to reach out and touch the Chinese, they may reach out and touch us. And that's a big concern. The Japanese have the ability to build some very advanced equipment, and we can certainly arm them as well, help them arm. But they also have to spend more money on their defenses. And they may be quietly doing that, but we have asked them to go to that 2% of their GDP as we have with Nato. That's, I think, the basic Nato rule is that everybody has to chip in at least 2%. We've been chipping in a lot more over the years, and as you know, Trump was adamant that the European countries cough up their fair share and not make us carry the whole burden. We'll see how that works out with Biden. I don't know if he's stuck to that or not, Ken.
Well, he should if he hasn't.
He should, and you know, and the Europeans and the British, they better take a close look at what's going on in Ukraine and say, is this what we really want here? You know, do we want the Russians knocking on Poland's door? And Poland's part of NATO now.
Yeah.
So
if they go to Poland, we have to go in.
We have to go in. If they go down and say, you know, we want you to roll back your NATO boundaries to 1997, that means Poland is now in our sphere of influence, then we're going to have to do something. This is just ridiculous. What are these people thinking in Washington? What are they thinking? I mean,
they're thinking, how do I keep my job? That's what they're thinking.
Yeah, they're thinking, how do I not have my pension and my portfolio upset? And they're thinking, how can I maintain all the power that I have and not be kicked out by some evil orange man like Trump? But I mean, even FDR realized in the 1930s that his program, his social program, had pretty much failed. The New Deal had failed, and that we were headed to war. And he told his young cabinet members, Wallace and Claude Pepper and Adlai Stevenson, his socio-communist gang that was in there pushing for the socialization of the country. And when they came to him in 1938 and said, what happened to the New Deal? He said, it didn't work. We're going to war, guys. Put on, you know, strap on your armor. And, you know, we did go to war. We did. He knew, he saw it coming. I don't think Biden has that ability to see down the road that far. I don't think he has. He's not the same academic and acumen level as Franklin Delano Roosevelt. But you would think that he would have enough sense to see that you don't let these people just march into the Ukraine or take Taiwan. I mean, you just don't let them do that. This is not the way to have world peace.
I read one theory over the last week that I thought was interesting. Want to know what you think of it? I was reading an article about, it's a financial article, and they were talking about this whole Ukraine thing and the possibility. Now, Russia, like you said earlier, they give out a lot of oil. They sell a lot of oil. They want the price of oil as high as they can make it, and him going into the Ukraine will push oil over the $100 a barrel mark easily.
It probably will, because you'll have to consume a lot of fuel to move tanks and troops, and so they'll divert oil away from and natural gas away from their domestic sales, which will drive the prices up because there'll be a shortage.
And the whole country will make money because it's the worldwide oil price will go up.
Yeah, the demand will be there still, and the supply will be decreased. So it's a simple economic formula: supply and demand. If you have more demand and less supply, you're going to ask more money.
So could this partly be he just wants to get the price of oil up?
Well, I think that money is always a good thing to have if you want to wage war, whether economic war or military war. You need money.
Yeah.
You need cash, baby. And the more cash he has, the more power he has. I mean, let's face it, these are power-hungry people. They want power. They want absolute power. They want to control the world. And they make no bones about it. But how do we stop that? We stand up to them. So it's just that simple. It's just so simple. It's not easy, but it's simple, as they say in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not easy, it's simple, but it's not easy. It's going to take some courage. It's going to take realigning our assets into military and instead of into all these crazy social programs. And we do have to rebuild our infrastructure. But, I don't understand some of the rebuilding. I mean, instead of repaving the roads in St. Petersburg, Florida, they're putting in these bus stop embankments on Central Avenue and First Avenue North and South. And I don't understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. The traffic was moving fine before, and the roads are still unpaved. There's still potholes all over the place. So, Ken,
it's really falling apart.
It makes no sense.
The bridges are just deteriorating in many, many locations.
Well, fortunately in Florida, we have invested a lot of money in bridges because it's so vital to our way of life here in Florida. We have more coastline than any other state in the lower 48. Of course, Alaska's the big boy on everything, but we have more than California. We have more than Texas. We've got more coastline than anybody. We've got more barrier islands than anybody. We've got more canals that are crossed than anybody. And so we have put a lot of money into keeping our bridges up, and we've done a good job. We've done a good job.
But many states have not.
Many states have not, and they've counted on the federal government to do it for them. And in some ways, they'll need help because if you're crossing the Ohio or the Mississippi River on a bridge, that's a big project, and you're usually going from one state to another. So you're in an interstate situation. You need some federal help. And I'm sure we've gotten some federal help with our state bridges, but we've done a pretty good job, and we've stayed in the black. We've kept our economy in the black in Florida. We've done a really good job of managing our money. And people say, well, yeah, but you're still one of the poorer states in terms of per capita income. Well, you got to mix in not only that we're a southern state, but also that we've got a large retirement population that's on fixed income, Ken. And, what are you going to do? You can't say, well, you're poor because you guys aren't making as much money as the rest of the country. Well, you know what? If you're on a fixed income, you're retired, you ain't going to get a raise.
That's right.
It ain't coming. I mean, you might get 1 or 2% every 4 or 5 years when the AARP yells and screams and carries on. But overall, we actually have a lot of wealth down here. We have a lot of resources, perhaps not as much as some of the interior states, but, even oil. We've got tons of oil sitting right under our feet.
We do? I didn't know that.
Yeah, but we don't want to drill. I mean, and I talked with one driller, and he said, Doc, I can drill down and make a 90-degree turnout into the Gulf of Mexico, and I can hit oil in a month. But we don't want to drill. We don't want that on our coast. We'll leave that to Louisiana and Texas. They can have the Global Horizon oil spill. But, it affected us too, though. So there are reasons that we don't want to do that, and we've got plenty of resources coming in from the Gulf, from our sister state, Louisiana and Texas. And so we're okay, and it comes in on barges. It doesn't come in on tankers, so our gasoline...
Yeah, we're America's playground. This is where people come to sit on the beach.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, and we want to stay that way. We want to stay a nice, clean, healthy environment and welcome people down here. I mean, Orlando is one of the most visited places on Earth, at least in the Western world. I don't know about China. They probably have places that are more visited now, but just because of their sheer size.
Isn't there a Disney World or something like it in China? Isn't there a China Disney?
There's.
I think there is, yeah.
And in some of their provinces like Macau and Hong Kong and different places, they have resorts and huge Disney World-like parks. And when we were in Xi'an and we went to see the terracotta statues, which are the 2,500-year, 2,000-year-old statues of all the soldiers of one of the emperors that he had made so that they would be with him in the afterlife, I guess. And they're all buried, and then some farmer found them several decades ago. He did well. He got a lot of land and never had to work again. But when we went there, we thought, well, there'll be a lot of tourists, but what we didn't realize is they were 99% Chinese. And I mean, there were thousands and thousands of people there that were there to see the terracotta statues. And you go into the museum part of it, Ken, and they had taken pictures of the faces of these warriors that had been ensconced for not all eternity, but for a long period of time. And they put the pictures up on the walls because a lot of these families that these soldiers were, the patriarchs of, were still living in the area. So people would come in and they'd look up on the wall and they said, hey, that looks exactly like Grandpa. That looks exactly like Dad. And so they were looking at their ancestors from 2,000 years ago. And it is a big draw. It's a big draw. And there's no theme park there. It's just these terracotta statues in the museum. And it's really, it's fun to see. It's really interesting, and it's huge. It's huge. And they still haven't dug, I don't think they've only dug up like a third of the area. They're going to wait, I guess. They're doing archaeological studies as they go. It's unbelievable, unbelievable. Football field size and just full of terracotta statues of these soldiers. So how did I get onto that?
I'm not sure how we got there.
I don't know.
But I do have, I can bring us back to the Ukraine because that was the answer to today's question.
Yay.
And Yoland Mahalik of St. Pete came up with the correct answer. Yoland Mahalik of St. Pete, congratulations. You're going to get two, count them, two Dr. Bill, your Radio MD coffee mugs in the mail from the good doctor in just a few weeks, probably. We'll get them to you as soon as we can. But he had the correct answer to the question, how far, back in the day, how far did the Silk Road go? And it went to?
The Ukraine. Yes, sir.
All right.
That is pretty cool. Yoland, and what was that last name again? That sounds Serbian.
Mahalik, I think it is.
Mahalik, or that sounds, Balkan Peninsula or Eastern Europe. Mahalik. I knew a Mihalovich. He was a surgeon. I guess he still is a cardiac surgeon, and he was from somewhere in the Balkans, in the former Yugoslavia area. So that, I think that's going to be a name in that region of the world there. So that's good. I mean, it kind of ties things together at the end of the show here. What do you say?
That's right. We got about 4 minutes left. So.
Yeah, we do.
What do you want to talk about next, Doc? You want to stick with the? You want to talk about the virus at all? We really haven't talked about the virus. Anything new there at all?
We're just seeing the surge is continuing, although it seems to be dying down some. Our hospital, we've got one ward that's full, almost all unvaccinated, and that remains a problem. And I'm really upset with a lot of these news media outlets, including Fox, who are saying that the vaccine doesn't protect against Omicron. That's not what the studies say. The studies say that you can still catch Omicron, but if you're fully vaccinated, and especially if you're boosted, and now the Israelis are going into a fourth booster, which, by the way, I beat them by a month because I took my fourth shot in December over Christmas. Isn't it amazing how I've been ahead of this? I'm so proud of myself.
Hey, I'm just glad I've been with you this whole time. You kept me alive.
I'm glad that you are alive, because I can't do this alone. You've become an integral part of the show. Dang, what am I going to do? Do I have to pay you?
That I need, so.
Tell Barb to increase your salary. And so it's not that it doesn't protect you against Omicron. It keeps you from getting very sick from Omicron. So if you get the Omicron and you're fully vaccinated, 3 doses, and I'm going to start telling people, and I told this to Ken, I said, let's check your antibody levels. Did we get those back yet, Ken? I don't know.
I haven't heard yet. So it was that Thursday we did that. So
yeah, they're probably back. I just haven't looked yet. But here's the thing: if your antibody levels are high, you don't need a 4th dose. But we would like to check you again in 4 to 6 months and see if they start to fall, because there may be some more strains coming along. Now, if your antibody levels are low, you need a booster. Why? Because this will keep you from getting too sick if you do get the Delta or the Omicron. And we know that there's been essentially no deaths from the Omicron in people who are fully vaccinated. So this is really still an important talking point, Ken. I mean, as much as I'm sick of talking about it, it really remains a major public health threat, and it interferes with the smooth functioning of the hospitals. And in Canada, they've shut down elective surgeries. The doctors aren't going to their offices. They're only seeing people on telemedicine visits because the government has them so scared. And their vaccination, although they've been highly vaccinated, a lot of them only got 1 shot, and then they had to wait 6 months to get another. And of course, they started off with the live virus, the adenovirus vaccines, and those were not as effective as the mRNAs. Now they've got the mRNA vaccines, the Pfizer and the Moderna. And this is important. And you say, well, natural immunity is better. Well, you know what? Any immunity is good. You got to get your antibody levels up. It doesn't matter if you want to go out and catch the Omicron and risk ending up in the hospital really sick and not get a vaccine. That's fine with me. I mean, that's not going to make or break my day. You're going to use up resources that could be allocated for other purposes, but we have enough beds in the United States that we can handle it. At least in our state we do, Ken. We've got tons of beds. We're fine. We got tons of ventilators, although we haven't had anybody on the ventilator with the Omicron.
This is all good things.
We haven't had anybody in the ICU. They're all out on the floor. And they're all largely elderly, sick people who didn't get vaccinated. So what's that tell you?
Get vaccinated.
Get vaccinated. Come on. What's the big deal?
Not rocket science here.
No, and it's not like anybody's growing a 3rd arm or, and nobody's having a spontaneous miscarriage from having the vaccine. I mean, this is all nonsense. We're not having any deformed babies come out whose mothers had the vaccine while they were pregnant. This is just so damn silly. And people
20 seconds, Doc. Say goodbye, buddy. We're sorry. We got to go.
We got to go. Love you guys. 727-384-6411. 727-384-6411. Hi, I'm Dr. Bill. I'm out of here.
Thank you for listening to Dr. Bill, your radio MD. Join Dr. Bill every Sunday morning at 9 for more insight, information, provocation, and fun. Dr. Bill Handelman practices in St. Petersburg, Florida at Bay Area Medical Care Clinic, 6399 38th Avenue North. For your convenience, telemedicine appointments are available. Call his office today at 727-384-6411. That's 727-384-6411. Or visit his website at cancareclinic.com.